evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular Board of Education meeting on this Monday, September 26, 2016. I'd like to get started, and I'd like to start us off by the recitation of our vision statement, and that is that every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. Okay, we'll get started tonight. Lots on the agenda tonight, including getting home and listening to the first debate. I'm sure you all are just anxious to get home and see that debate, so we'll see if we can move through this agenda here quickly. And the next item on the agenda will be public appearances. And I do recommend that everyone stay within the guidelines. The guidelines are 3 minutes per person, so please try not to exceed that. I'll call up 2 speakers at a time, and so please, while one speaker is speaking, the other one should be ready to move forward to speak in that order. So, again, public appearances, 3 minutes apiece. First person to speak tonight will be Dave Baskerville, and that person will be followed by Carrie Marlette. So please come forward.
This is the mic.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Dave Baskerville, graduate of West High School. My mother went to East High School. My wife went to East High School. We had a mixed marriage. And we live now just on the very east side of the West High, Franklin, Randall neighborhood. So thanks for the time. I'm here, and some of you have heard it before, but just to put in a plea that you raise the expectations for our kids. I've been in international business all my life, and my concern is that we don't benchmark our kids in any kind of an international way. I realize we have a common core, but America is number 35 in math and 27 in science, and it's just not fair to our kids not to benchmark them against the world. That's the real world. That's the world they're going to find jobs in, they're going to compete in, and if they don't have those basic skills, I worry about it. The second thing I would urge is that, related to that, it be long-term goals, and many of you have heard me say it. I don't think we can fix Madison's problems with 2 or 5 year goals. We've got a great superintendent, and I urge the board to stretch her out 20 years and expect her to get these kids in that time horizon to be as good as any kid in the world, not just well below Bulgaria and Romania, much less South Korea and Finland. So that's my pitch. I'm going to come back a couple more times. You'll probably hear me ad nauseum, but I hope that you not only help the gap between the poor and the rich, between the minorities and the Caucasians, but there's a huge gap, I believe, in Madison and throughout the country between the U.S. and most of the emerging and first world. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Marlette, followed by Kathy Applegard.
My name is Carrie Marlette, and I am one of the co-founders of Isthmus Montessori Academy. I studied journalism here at the UW, and I fell in love with a native of Madison. I'm still here 40 years later, having raised 2 children who attended Madison schools, and we chose an urban setting in which to open our school. I have a master's degree in education and have worked in Montessori elementary level classrooms for 20 years, but this has all been private sector work. Melissa Dressler and I worked to open the doors of Isthmus Montessori Academy with mindful intention to be accessible to all families. We are a nonprofit school for children from the ages of 2 months to 15 years of age. From the day we opened our doors, IMA has been state licensed to be accessible to families who receive subsidies from the state. Imagine if all the families who think Montessori education is the best option for their children could have the opportunity to do so regardless of their socioeconomic status. We celebrate Madison, the Madison Metropolitan School District, and AMI Montessori education. We know how well AMI Montessori lessons and materials will complement and enhance our public school system curriculum, as well as its mission and vision for innovation. Dr. Montessori was a visionary who completed her due diligence, as do all of you who serve on the school board. She was a medical doctor who observed and noted how children of each age love to learn and thrive. She created amazing materials and lessons that allow children to hold many concepts and terms in their hands, making the discoveries and the connections to the real world for themselves. Montessori education is brain-based, and it meets each student's developmental needs. Thank you for your attention and consideration. This can be a unique and successful collaboration to help serve the children.
Thank you. Kathy, followed by John Wheeler.
Hi, my name is Kathy Opegard, and I am the mother of Annika, who is 4.5. And I'm here as a tribute to say how well Montessori education works for children with disabilities. My Annika has quadriplegic cerebral palsy, and she uses a walker. She has very limited capacity to speak, but she uses a Tobii eye-activated device, which the school has placed in the classroom. They make sure she can talk to her friends at lunchtime. I mean, it's been such a lovely, lovely place for her to be. The philosophy meets children where they're at, and this is exactly what Annika needs. And the teachers, the philosophy is based on respect for the child, and that's all I ever see with them, is that they're profound respect for her. She's also a member of a mixed age community, and so the older kids know how to work with her and help her. They have adapted the materials so that she can use them. They've put time and resources into making it possible for us to have her at a school, which means so much to me as a parent. And from the start, Maria Montessori, her first research was with children with disabilities, and so it's just integral to the system of Montessori. And so I just wanted to encourage you all to consider like a Montessori public school, because it's just a wonderful resource. And Annika gets greeted every day by friends who know her, and if you know her, she has the hugest smile ever, and so just for them to believe in her capacities and believe in her intelligence is huge, because I'm not trying to jump over prejudice that's there. They're already saying, okay, what can she do? What can Annika do? Okay, great. We're going to adapt this sensory table so she can reach it. We're going to adapt this water play so she can reach it. We're going to make sure she can do matching things. Let's make sure she can learn her letters. How can we adapt her Tobii eye-activated device so that it works for her and so that we can talk together? So thank you very much for your time and attention. Thank you.
John Wheeler, followed by Sally Griffith.
Good evening. My name is John Wheeler. I'm a Madison teacher and a 29-year National Guard veteran. My current role is Chief of Protection for the Wisconsin National Guard. My role allows me to work with local, state, and national law enforcement, and to be educated and trained on emergency management to include security initiatives such as an active shooter event. I'm here today to inform the Madison Board on the urgent need to update our school district's response and training policy to the threat of a school shooting or an active shooter incident. The current MMSD policy of lockdown only is not in line with established best practices and clear recommendations of the U.S. Department of Education. An extensive FBI study has shown that an active shooter incidents have occurred annually with an increasing trend from 2000 to 2013, and that trend continues today. The FBI study also supports the notion that a more flexible and fluid response policy saves lives and prevents injury, while a lockdown-only policy puts our students and staff at greater risk. Furthermore, the study highlights the importance of conducting training exercises that include an understanding of the threats, but also options available in the active shooter incident. Now, due to that FBI study, national law enforcement, safety, emergency management organizations are recommending a multi-option response. A list of those organizations is extensive, but most importantly includes the Department of Education. In its 2013 guide for developing school emergency operation plans, the U.S. Department of Education agrees a lockdown-only response to an active shooter no longer meets government recommendations. If a school district fails to its duty to protect students from injury and an appropriate standard of care was not used, that district can be found negligent. The standard of care is not a statute or a regulation that is pointed to or expounded upon. The standard of care is a concept that is argued in courtrooms requiring school districts to answer questions like, did you follow state and federal recommendations? Is your policy consistent with comparable schools? And did you comply with your own stated policy? MMSD is not currently meeting federal guidelines. However, we can work toward being compliant, and I would be happy to assist so we can meet the standard of care required by the U.S. Department of Education. I provided the board with additional information that you can read that will help you understand the needed urgency in revising the current policy so that there is a plan in place allowing administrators and teachers to provide a proper standard of care for our students in the unfortunate event of an active shooter incident. I have experience in working with law enforcement and emergency management at all levels, training for active shooter events. I would embrace the opportunity to sit on a committee to help revise the current policy and create a plan that works for Madison's needs. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have. I appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you. Sally Griffith, followed by Kristen Ford.
Hi, my name is Sally Griffith-O. I have two daughters, a 5th grader and an 8th grader, who have been in Montessori since they were 2 years old. And I wanted to share some reasons why our family really is gung-ho about Montessori education. In Montessori, the focus is on the whole child, not just academics, but also social development, emotional development, and practical skills. The central idea is that all children are intelligent and have great potential. The school provides the environment, a supportive community, and a rich and broad academic curriculum in which the children can construct themselves. As the teachers work in partnership with the parents to ensure that the kids have an optimal environment at home, like they're getting enough sleep, they're eating well, they're minimizing screen time to foster success at school. From early on, kids are involved in meaningful projects that interest them. For example, when my youngest daughter started 1st grade, she would sit down for 10 to 15 minutes, 2 to 3 times per week with the assistant teacher, and she'd read books, usually about animals. And over time, she learned how to jot down facts from her reading in her own words onto note cards, and then to organize these ideas into paragraphs. And this started her on the long road of doing research projects. She would go on trips to the public library with her classmates, and she learned how to find out more books on topics that she was researching. She also got to participate in going outs. Now, a going out is when a small group of students who are working together on a research project contact an expert in the community who can answer questions about their topic. It might be a professor at the UW in biology, or a bakery owner, or a museum curator, and the students call and they schedule a date and a time to visit. They're also responsible for figuring out how they will get there. Will they hop on the metro bus? Which route will they take? What time do they have to leave to get there and not be late? And then after they visit, they make sure to write a thank you note to the expert that they met with, and they incorporate the facts they learned into their final research project. So in this whole process, the kids are building skills in a lot of different areas. They're learning how to gather information, how to reserve library books, telephone etiquette, logistical planning, writing and oral presentation skills, all while they're learning about a topic that's very interesting to them. This same approach continues in the Montessori Middle School program as well. At this phase in their self-construction, the students are starting to think about their role in society. And each year, the students work together to set up and run a micro-entrepreneurship. This last year, my oldest daughter, who was a 7th grader, chose to run a hot lunch school program. And every Wednesday, she would serve a meal made entirely from scratch to her schoolmates. It had to be gluten-free, dairy-free, organic, and vegetarian, which was kind of complicated. And she researched recipes, she put together menus, created order forms, brainstormed marketing strategies, shopped for ingredients, cooked the meals with the help of her elementary schoolmates, and she also oversaw the bookkeeping. And so it's through these projects that the students start to think about what's important to them and to put ideas into action, to find their voice and to advocate for causes they believe in, and eventually to become contributing members of society. So I really hope that we can make Montessori available as a public option in Madison. Montessori education encourages collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving, which are all wonderful skills that we need for the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you. Kristen? followed by Aaron Tronson.
Good evening. My name is Kristen. I'm here to read a letter that we sent to the board from Families for Justice, and we're here to read it publicly. Families for Justice is a multi-generational network made up predominantly of white parents and their families who are deeply troubled by racial injustice in our community and are actively working to be part of the solution. We have paid attention to the district's recent contract negotiations with the city, talked with community members about police and schools, and reviewed MMSD's own evaluation of this program, as well as the published research literature on this topic. We have concluded that police do not belong in our schools. I'm sorry, I'm out of breath. I was running after my toddler out there. It is clear to us that the impact of police in schools causes more harm than good, particularly when it comes to racial inequities. We are thus writing to express our extreme disappointment at the prospect of the 3-year ERO contract renewal. At the same time, we applaud the revision of the termination clause, which will ensure the right to cancel the contract for any reason. We do see this as a sign that you are at least listening to community concerns about the harmful impacts of the EROs for our children. After the Columbine school shootings, federal grants supported schools like those in Madison to increase police officer presence in schools. While there has been reduction in crime in schools since then, this is a long-term trend that cannot be attributed to increased numbers of school-based officers. In fact, crime has declined at a slower rate since 1999, when federal funding began. Instead of increased safety, the result has been a massive, I'm sorry. The result has been a massive increase in the number of youth being arrested at schools and formally processed through the justice system. Indeed, one study found that schools with a police officer had nearly 5 times the rate of arrests for disorderly conduct as those without. We have heard many anecdotes of good people filling ERO roles, helping to build relationships with police and reducing likelihood of arrest. These anecdotes, however, do not make sense of the alarming disparities that persist in our cities and schools. MMSD's own evaluation of EROs shows no evidence that police and schools are helping our city reduce the 11-to-1 black to white arrest disparity in the city. Rather, with a 6-to-1 black to white arrest disparity in our schools, with black children making up only 18% of the school population, EROs may very likely be contributing to it. If MMSD's evaluation of this program is meant to show that this program is effective and worthy of continuation, one may assume that the goal of the ERO program is actually to remove black children from schools and hand them over to police. I hear the beeping. I have a couple of paragraphs. May I finish? I'm sorry for this. It's okay. In summary, we will be working, hopefully with you, over the course of the next year and a half to remove EROs from schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Tronson, followed by Queen.
Hi, I'm Erin Razika Tronson, and I run Woodland Montessori School, a nonprofit preschool here in Madison. I also just completed my graduate degree at the UW-Madison Department of Curriculum and Instruction, and I did completed research which focused specifically on Montessori and social justice. I should also note that I'm a proud product of Madison Public Schools, and my 3 daughters all went or currently attend public schools. I am here in support of Isthmus Montessori School's proposal for a public charter Montessori in Madison. This opportunity is too important to pass on. I am also here to say that I see a lot of validity in the school board's concerns around this proposal. When they are boiled down, your concerns are about equity. The school board is concerned about resources, transportation costs, ability to serve all populations, and where the attendance lines are being drawn. And according to the research around Montessori public schools,
The board is spot on for zeroing in this focus to determine if a Montessori public school will serve only affluent populations or will serve all populations. That said, the IMA proposal also contains many key indicators that are found in the research that ensure a public Montessori school will work to serve all populations, and it will work to close gaps. For example, the neighborhood in which IMA chose for their school's location, their inclusion of a busing plan, their plans to maintain, recruit, and train a diverse teaching staff, the inclusion to plan and to recruit underserved families, and that there is before and after care provided at the proposed public school, those are all signs that IMA's intentions are to meet equity goals and are similar to MMSD's equity goals. I have heard again and again of IMA's commitment in working with MMSD, and I have no doubt that they will work to honor this partnership and include these key indicators. But I will close by suggesting that these two groups, IMA and MMSD, actually are very aligned in their goals and very hopeful for similar outcomes for students in Madison. Superintendent Jennifer Cheatham says on the MMSD website, quote, "We are on a mission to close the gaps in opportunity that lead to disparities in achievement. Making Montessori accessible to all children is one of the ways to close gaps in opportunity. As it stands right now, in Madison, only those who can pay can afford Montessori education. This school board has an opportunity to change that. School board, I urge you to support this proposal. What you have in Melissa and Carrie is unique knowledge. They understand the landscape of education in Madison alongside such valuable experience at Craig Montessori School in Milwaukee. That is one of the many public Montessori schools in the United States where they serve 66% of student populations their student population receives free and reduced lunch. Let Madison join Milwaukee, Chicago, New York City, or even closer to home, Racine, Appleton, and Wausau, and the other 509 public Montessori schools nationwide. Please choose to support IMA in crafting an acceptable proposal to close the gaps of opportunity in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Queen, followed by Elise Muldrow.
Hello, I'm Queen. Of course, I'm going to try to stick with my 3 minutes because I know I'm going to get yelled at, unlike others. I wanted to come and talk to you guys today just because going on the website, trying to figure out what time the meeting will be, what the agenda will be, what the minutes were for the last meeting. It is very outdated. I went on the website, I had to go, it's like numerous steps to try to get to the Board of Education. Then your beautiful pictures come up. You have to scroll down, you have to find the calendar, you have to touch the calendar, you have to push the agenda's not up to date, you have to push the minutes is not up to date, then you have to call. If you don't get an answer, then you don't know what the meeting is about. I'm here to propose to you guys that the way we get the robocalls, if that costs too much, if we can get emails as parents in the Madison Metropolitan School District with an agenda each week on a Friday, letting us know Monday there's a meeting, this is an open meeting, it's a closed meeting, what time you can speak, what time you have to be there to speak. And again, I'm gonna stress on what the topics are, and then also saying if you did a robocall, each board member do it, adults do it each week, so we can get to know your voices, your name introduced in the robocall, saying what topic is covered. And then when a parent comes up here and they have a concern, that each week a different board member is assigned to answer those questions via email to that parent. When we fill out these sheets, we put all the information on there. I stopped putting all my information on there. You see, I just put Queen and I put down speak. I don't put an address, I don't put an email, I don't put anything else because I don't get a response, I don't get a call, I don't get a letter in the mail. So therefore, I feel like filling out that sheet is worthless. Just put your name, and if you're for or oppose a topic, if you know what the topic is, we should be able to know what the topic is before we get here, if it's relevant to anything that's going on. And every time I come to the meetings, I do see different groups or organizations that are for what is going to be spoke about on the agenda. And I find it very weird that the only time I ever find out something is when it has to do with disability kids, not the fact that something is being done with African American kids, Latino, any other minority group, but maybe you guys don't speak about that. But I'm just wondering, how do other schools or organization programs get the information to know to come speak? Are they connected? Are they in some type of clique that works together to say you need to be here at this board meeting to speak about this? Because I was told before when they were going on strike, come as a parent, come with your kids, come support us at the Coliseum. I did that, but that's because I was invited as a parent from another teacher that wanted us to know about it. But if we're not, it seems like we're not in the know. We don't need to know, therefore we don't need to come, we don't need to say anything about it. And I just wanted to come and say, can you please change that, fix everything that needs to be done, because your intentions are to work with the community. But if each one of you represent me, I really can't, I can pull out one maybe that represents one thing for me, but there's other issues that goes on in African-American parent-child school district. What I'm trying to say is the kids in school need help, and we never know what's going on until it's too late, and we all show up, and then it goes on and on into the night, and you guys are stuck here all night. So that's what I'm asking for you guys to do. If you don't understand, please email me or call me and ask me what I really was trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Elise Muldrow, followed by Sandy Winlander. I didn't see Elise. Is Elise Muldrow here? I don't see Elise. Okay. Sandy Winlander, followed by Melissa Dressler.
Hi, I'm Sandy. Thanks for being here. I know a lot of the nation is home watching the Hillary Clinton-Donald Trump debate. I know I'd much rather be here participating in local democracy, which we're doing tonight. I come as both a father and as a teacher in the school district. I have two daughters, Adrian and Issa. They're both at Isthmus Montessori Academy now. Adrian started in 4K at Lapham Elementary, and I know Lapham's a very good school, but Adrian's a very active child, and she, has a hard time sitting at a desk all day. She also is very independent, and I think those are both actually very good qualities in a child, and I embrace them, and I intend to celebrate her for who she is. I do think that kids learn differently. When we put Adrian into Montessori school at Woodland, it was nice to be able to come to class and find that she was able to independently learn, sort of at her own pace. If you want to learn about one topic at this time, it's okay. You don't have to do the same thing that everybody else is doing. And so I was very happy with the way she responded to Montessori school. I'm also a lover of public education, and I'm a teacher at Lincoln Elementary School in the 5th grade dual immersion program. I think as a teacher that there's a lot of kids that need different learning environments, different learning opportunities. That's not to say that what's taught in public school isn't also very important. It's just that some kids learn differently and they need different learning environments. For example, like my own daughter. I think seeing kids in 5th grade that could have benefited from a little more like celebrating their independence as a young child, and the opportunities that Montessori provides as an early child are more able to let kids celebrate their independence. I think that the main thing I would like to see is that in Montessori school be available to kids that need that in their lives, and I think that needs to be available to people at all income levels, and really the only way to do that is to make it available as a public school. And it's an initiative that I look at as embracing public education and welcoming in a new opportunity to the school district, and I hope that you'd be able to support it tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Melissa Dressler, followed by Leela Pine.
Hi, good evening. Good to see everyone. Where do I start? All of us at Isthmus Montessori Academy have welcomed the board's inquiries and comments. They have been thoughtful and incisive. Thank you. As we continue to work as partners in a common cause, nothing is more important than clarity in our communications, and we really appreciate your collaboration. The academic journals are replete with scientific studies verifying the efficacy, of Montessori. It is the only way to educate a child? No, it's not. But it is highly effective. Does it favor society's elites? No, it doesn't. The first Montessori classroom was in a tenement building and focused on children who were thought to be, quote, ineducable. But there's more to education than studies and statistics, as you know. I saw this when I taught in a public Montessori school in inner city Milwaukee and looked into the faces of the children in my classroom. I saw it in the face of the child who was raised by a grandmother who worked 2 jobs to support the entire family, in the face of the homeless child who stole her breakfast on the way to school, in the face of the child who was afflicted with overwhelming anxiety and plucked her eyelashes out from her eyelids every day, in the face of the child who pushed and hit and screamed because she didn't know another way to communicate, in the face of the child whose beautiful fluency in his native tongue belied his halting English, in the face of the child who could hear only muffled sounds just as sighted people might see only vagueness in a darkened room, in the faces of the children who, all too often, because of the color of their skin or how they looked or talked, felt the weight of society's diminished expectations. And then I saw all of these children learn and grow and thrive and succeed, and I knew that I would dedicate my life's work to this cause. My plan was to return home and teach in a public Montessori school. Sadly, none existed in Madison, so I turned to my colleague, Carrie Marlette. Together, we decided to create a nonprofit Montessori school. Our plan was based on hope, a hope that someday, somehow, we might be able to transform our school into a public Montessori school here in Madison with the district. After 5 years of working towards our goal of becoming an MMSD, actually neighborhood district school is what we want, that day is now upon us, and we stand before you as dedicated partners, ready to devote the entirety of our working and creative energies not to compete with, but to grow with MMSD, to draw and retain students to the district and to reach students in ways that they have never been reached before. We now humbly stand before you and ask, may we become a part of your team. Thank you.
Thank you. Leela Pine.
Good evening. My name is Lila Pine. I have 2 children that I adopted in Colombia, South America, and they were raised through the Madison Public School System. They are now adults. In my retirement, I am working often down at the Arizona-Mexico border as humanitarian aid worker, so I'm sorry I've been out of town for the last 2 weeks and missed apparently quite a bit of discussion about the police being in the Madison high schools. But I just feel I need to share just one personal story about my son when he went to East High School. He was a kid who had never been in trouble, was very shy, very well behaved in class. But as a sophomore at East High School, he was arrested by one of the school police officers that were stationed there when he and 3 of his white friends, and he's fairly dark complected, so he can't pass for white. He is very clearly identified as Latino. 3 of his white friends called him into one of their cars, and they were caught by the police officer at the school smoking marijuana, which of course is against the law, and I had a long talk with him about this at the time. This was, quite a few years back. But he was arrested and had to appear in court. His 3 white friends were just given a warning, and I was told that the officer called their parents to inform them about it and warn them that this better not happen again. My son had never been in trouble before. He was, in addition to being arrested, he was suspended for school for several days, and he was suspended from the soccer team, the one thing that brought great joy in his life, for the rest of the school year. The 3 white boys kept on playing soccer the rest of the school year. They hadn't been arrested. But that wasn't the worst part. That wasn't the bad part at all. The worst part was that for the next 3 months, the police officer stationed at East High waited for my son by his locker 3 days a week and humiliated him by treating him like a criminal. He didn't do this with the white boys. Patting him down, searching his locker, throwing his books all over the floor, with hundreds of high school kids walking by through the lunch period, mocking my son, laughing at him, calling him nasty names. They told the cop that my son was Colombian, and even though he was a U.S. citizen and he was an infant when he was in Colombia, the cop seemed to really have it in for him after that, seemed to assume he was a drug dealer, which wasn't true at all. My son was so humiliated and in so much pain from this real cruelty that he came home crying and refused to go back to school ever again, saying it was just too painful. Frankly, how could I blame him? If that had happened to me, I'd never go back either. I talked to the police officer, whom I told was a very nice man.
Please finish up.
Okay. He just said my son needed to understand this so he wouldn't become a, quote, repeat offender. He had wanted to be a teacher or a guidance counselor and work with kids of color, especially because he felt he would understand what they had to go through. It took him, after this instance and this constant humiliation, it took him 6 years after high school graduation to get up the courage to go to college. To this day, he has very low self-esteem. He really, is just working physically difficult, challenging jobs. And I guess my message is, it's not just the arrests themselves, but all the incidents around them and the humiliation and the sense that you don't belong here that can have permanent long-term effects on the kids in our school system. So I hope you'll consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our public speakers for tonight. We'll continue on. Next on the agenda will be the approval of our minutes. I move that the Board of Education approve the minutes dated July 25th and August 29th, 2016. It's been moved and second. Any questions or comments in regards to those minutes? Seeing none, let your advisory vote. Samaya?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, next on the agenda, Board President's announcements and reports. News from around the district. WASB, W-A-S-B, declares School Board Appreciation Week. The Wisconsin Association of School Boards has designated October 2nd through the 8th to be Wisconsin School Board Appreciation Week. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my fellow members of the board for their service to the Madison schools. I would also like to thank the community for giving us the opportunity to serve you as part of your school board. Yeah, give your hand. Also, Memorial student receives perfect score on the advanced placement exams. Memorial High School students, okay, let me see here, Samik Partu received a perfect score on all the advanced placement exams he took last school year. The 13-year-old sophomore took 5 AP exams and received a 5, which is the highest score on each exam. Samik also received the AP Scholar with Distinction Award for his accomplishment. Excellent job, Samik. I think that's deserves a medal. And on a lighter note, MSCR celebrates 90 years of programming. Madison School and Community Recreation is celebrating 90 years of affordable, accessible programming this year. MSCR began as a one-person department organizing summer playground programs that has grown to an organization that serves more than 119,000 participants every year. Thank you, MSCR, for the quality programs that you provide. We look forward to 90 more years. Mr. Loomis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I asked to read this one because I work very closely with Hmong community for many years, and my housing program received one of these story cloth displays. They're handmade by somebody, and you follow it around, you can understand the story. It's the whole Hmong community and how they live their lives. They're really special things. So we would like to say a special thank you to Sheng Li, a bilingual resource specialist at Kennedy Elementary School, as well as to the Hmong community in Madison. In May, they presented the district with a Hmong story cloth that has been framed and which will be displayed here at the Doyle Administration Building. As a district, we want to thank you for this beautiful and generous gift. Thank you.
And that concludes Board President's and announcement reports for this evening. Next on the agenda, Superintendent's announcements and reports.
Thank you, President Howard. I'm going to ask Nancy Hanks and Alex Fralin to join me up here on the stage. We're going to take no more than 15 minutes of your time tonight because I know there's a lot to cover. I'll give them a minute to get settled down. There's the clicker right there. As an extension of our annual report back in July, as well as our strategic framework update that I provided in August, we wanted to end what we're thinking of as a three-part series this evening, focus on our reflections and planned improvements to the way that we provide support to our schools, often referred to as our school support system. And we think it's important to talk about this as we launch the school year. Nancy Hanks, more for the audience, a reminder, is our chief of elementary schools, and Alex Fralin is the chief of our secondary schools. And they'll be leading the presentation tonight, and then taking any comments that you may have once they're finished. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Alex.
Great. Good evening, everyone. We are both excited and grateful for the opportunity to provide the opportunity for us to provide you an opportunity to provide the board an update on our school support system, now in its 4th year of implementation. Since we introduced this new way of working with schools to the board in the fall of 2013, we've made significant refinements based on an annual review of key data sets. The Central Office Satisfaction Survey results is one of those key data sets that indicates that we're making a positive impact on schools, with an 86 average effectiveness rating, up from 85% last year and 72% the year before. As outlined in our annual report, we believe our results, although more pronounced at the elementary school level, are a result of our intentional, systematic commitment to continuous improvement. Our goal tonight is not only to provide you an update on the various components of the school support system, but also to discuss how the support system sustains focused and disciplined way of working that most of our schools have adopted. as well as our progress on narrowing gaps. As you know, our district has a simple but bold vision, which was articulated earlier this evening. That vision is reflected in our strategic framework, which has 3 major goals aimed at increasing achievement and access while creating a positive and productive climate for staff, students, and families. The school support system is key to making sure we not only establish rigorous goals, but also have systems in place to ensure we're on track on achieving those goals. Over the past 3 years, our school improvement systems reflect a disciplined way of working, which is now woven into the fabric of the district-school partnership, which we've been working hard to cultivate. During this time, our internal central office systems have also become more disciplined, more data-driven and accountable than ever before, particularly as it relates to how we are collectively raising student achievement and eliminating gaps through our differentiated support structures and strategies. Just as a brief reminder, here are the key components of the school support system, which are all aligned to support the implementation of each school's school improvement process. Nancy and I use the deep dive process to both monitor and support the execution of those school improvement plans, while also providing us an opportunity to see how our district tools and resources and approaches are actually playing out in real time. Of course, our 9 wonderful school improvement partners, which our principals rave about, provide direct support to our school-based leadership team, our coaches, and our principals. The school support plans, which are brokered by the partners, connect schools to the central office support they request to help them implement the strategies in the school improvement plan. Nancy and I and central office manager use completion and satisfaction data to measure the impact on our schools on a quarterly basis. For the purpose of tonight's presentation, I'm going to first focus on the trends and themes from our current school improvement plans. And then Nancy is going to review the related school support plan system that helps drive the SIP implementation, share our results and next steps to inform the intensive support strategy, which we believe will continue to help us narrow the gap achievement. So for the first time during our Leadership Institute this August, all school-based leadership teams and their members were asked to reflect and articulate their individual and collective why. Why are they doing what they are doing? Why are they teaching, leading, and planning in the way that they are? Why have they chosen the strategies they've chosen? Based on their reflections, a review of their draft SIP, and as well as a review of their data, each team drafted an equity vision statement, which lives front and center in their theory of action. These vision statements have already started and will continue to help anchor their SIP implementation and related decision-making processes to their school's broader vision of equity and excellence for all students. These are just 2 examples of vision statements. One from Van Hise, which is a school that was outlined in our annual report, led by Peg Keeler, and the other one is from East High School team led by Mike Hernandez. We don't offer these vision statements as exemplars, but really just examples of how teams are envisioning equity at their school. Each year, our school's improvement plans get more precise, more coherent, and continue to build off the successes and challenges from the prior year. In many school improvement plans, schools reflected deeply on their culture and climate data, which required them to focus less on just VEP implementation and behavior response systems, and more on school-wide restorative and proactive practices that build and sustain strong classroom cultures. One significant shift that we've observed this draft cycle is how schools are approaching their planning for professional development. That includes greater teacher voice and best practices, a tighter focus on key few learning outcomes, and allows more time for data analysis, reflection, and planning. As schools sharpen their equity lens through the support of the National Equity Project and the Family and Community Engagement Department, we are finding that schools are more clear about why they have created the accelerated goals for some students while raising achievement for all. Additionally, they are articulating more targeted strategies necessary to accelerate the growth of students in their focus groups than they have in the past. Some of these strategies include the implementation of our gradual release of responsibility framework, as well as culturally and linguistically responsive practices. So our schools are currently putting the final touches on their SIP this week, leveraging the feedback cycles that started back in April that included the partners, central office staff, as well as Nancy and I. This week we'll be approving those plans and they'll be posted online October 3rd. Our deep dives, which we expect to conduct over 200 this year, will begin on September 26th and will include an enhanced instructional practice tool that will enable us to see and monitor changes in classroom practices over time and across the system. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Nancy to talk about our school support plan structure.
Thanks, Alex. Now that the work of SIP development is actually finished, we focus our efforts now on how to best support schools in the implementation of their SIPs for the remainder of the school year. And one of the ways in which we support implementation is through what we call a school support plan. The school support plan complements the SIP by allowing school leaders to signal when they need additional supports from central office to execute the quarterly implementation steps that they've outlined in their school improvement plans. The requests are driven by the school leader, and they're submitted in conjunction with the school improvement partner, and this kind of lays out the process. The department leads, once they receive the request, they work on identifying members of their team to complete the work, and after the requests are completed, principals have the opportunity to rate the customer service that was provided by the central office department. We really feel like this is another example, again, of a disciplined way of working that's taking hold in our central office, and it also demonstrates a level of reciprocal accountability between schools and central office. Last year, we moved from a more kind of paper-based request system to a more electronic system driven by Google Sites. And this really has allowed us the opportunity to better track our data. So on a quarterly basis, we're able to look at the number of requests that are submitted by SIP area, but we also are able to break down the number of requests in a quarter that I've submitted to each department. This allows us the opportunity to analyze the trends and themes that we see across the supports that schools are requesting, and in many ways it also informs our needs for professional development across the district as well. As you can see from the breakdown here, we have some departments that are requested more frequently than others, and then sometimes as the year progresses we can see that those requests even may taper off, which is okay as well. This year, our central office leaders worked to make the school support plans even stronger by developing what we call a menu of services for each department. The menus detail examples of the types of content and support that schools can request through the school support plan. This is something that we didn't have before. And although the schools aren't limited to what's actually in the menu, it does give them kind of a baseline to start from when they're formulating their request. So currently, the Q1 timeline is already in progress. All of the requests from schools for Q1 have been submitted, and the implementation actually begins on today. Throughout the remainder of the quarter, we continue to track the implementation of the request, completion, and at the end of the quarter, each department is provided with data on their completion rates, as well as the satisfaction from the principals, so they can use that data to reflect and adjust and provide even greater supports for the next quarter. Lastly, I want to highlight an aspect of our strategy that's really important because it talks about our efforts to provide our schools with the highest needs with the level of support that they need in order to close gaps in achievement. We know that even if every school had a strong school improvement plan, and even if we had school support plans to help connect them with supports to central office, that wouldn't be enough for the accelerated progress that we know we need to see in our district in order to close gaps. Our intensive support strategy is what we call, is a focus on providing additional supports to the schools that we know have the highest needs across our district, with some of those additional supports being listed here. As Jen has mentioned before, when it comes to our efforts around our strategy, there's nothing by chance here. Everything is intentional and not by accident. We know that these schools that we've identified for additional supports serve a large number of our students of color. At the elementary level, 68% of the schools that receive intensive support are students of color, and 66% at the middle school. So again, we're going to the places that have the students that we know need to see that accelerated progress. We also know that our intensively supported schools also have larger numbers of students in our focus groups as well. So we want to be intentional about, again, making sure that these schools not just make incremental gains, but that they make accelerated progress, which we know we need in order to narrow gaps. What we've learned in the last 3 years is that our efforts in supporting these schools that have been identified for intensive supports are beginning to pay off. Just to kind of orient you to the slides here, the numbers at the top of the graph show you our results from the previous year, and the numbers inside the bars give us a look at what our results or the trends have been either over the past year or in some cases the past 3 years. This is an example, again, we know that elementary early literacy is on the move across the district, but in the 13 schools that receive intensive support, we can see that their growth exceeds the average growth of the district, some of their gains even being double-digit gains. This is the type of accelerated progress that we know we need to see across the district if we're ever going to stand a chance at closing the gaps in achievement that we see. And as you know, last year, one of the priority investments that we made during our budget process was to provide quarterly professional development to all of the kindergarten through second grade teachers in these 13 schools. So an example where we're aligning our resources to the needs of our students in our schools. At the 3 through 5 level, we also see accelerated progress for students in literacy, with 9 out of 12 of the schools receiving intensive support, again exceeding the district's average growth in the past years for reading growth. Again, the kind of progress that we need to see. It's important to note that at the middle school level that we haven't yet realized some of the accelerated progress that we've seen at the elementary level, and we think that's the case because of two kind of distinct differences. One, we know that the same literacy support that's been offered through professional development at the elementary level hasn't yet been offered to middle school teachers, which is something that we're changing for this year. And we also know that our middle schools haven't yet benefited from having high-quality, standards-based curriculum materials, something that we know our elementary schools have benefited from in the last couple of years with the implementation of Mondo across all of our elementary schools. The good news is those are things that we are investing in this upcoming year. We currently have those high-quality materials this year in all of our middle schools for the first time, and I believe the literacy training for middle school teachers begins tomorrow, so that's well underway. And in the area of math, we see again similar results, some accelerated results for students in the area of proficiency and students in grades 3 through 5. And even though only 1 out of 7 middle schools saw gains in proficiency when it comes to math, we saw that 4 out of 7 schools, though, exceeded the district average in math growth. And we know our middle schools have been engaged in a new math curriculum this past year, and we believe that some of those new materials and practices is just beginning to take hold, and so we're hoping to see accelerated gains in those schools in the future. Again, for our next steps, we're really building off of what we've learned in the past 3 years. One, by extending professional development at the elementary level, not just to K-2 teachers in those 13 schools, but to K-5 teachers, again, deepening their work in literacy. And at the middle school level, as we mentioned before, we've invested in those high-quality materials, and again, are offering teachers in those middle schools the opportunity to attend professional development, not just in literacy, but professional development development and adolescent development. We know that middle school is a critical time for students, and that having the skills to attend to their social emotional needs is just as important as the work that we need to do to support them academically. And so with that, we'll stop and open it up for questions.
Thank you. And while I have the opportunity, I just want to thank both Alex and Nancy for their leadership as the people who work most closely with our schools on the ground. Oh.
Mine ain't working either.
It's not working for you? Okay, all right, never mind.
The rest of it is fine. The Word docs is in and
Oh, okay, got it.
Mr. Loomis.
Yeah, I was just curious if the schools that didn't hit their benchmarks, are you able to rotate services, additional services over there after identifying the areas of weakness and assist them with, and give them more help than what was there to
For the
help
schools that
them
receive
get
intensive
back up?
support. Yes, certainly for the few remaining schools that have not yet seen those accelerated results, absolutely, we're working with those teams to dig into the data to figure out maybe what exactly wasn't targeted in those particular schools to make sure that they're also on track to making that progress as well. Because again, it's not
What I was
just...
trying to get at, Nancy, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how do you do it? Do you send more people over there, or you spend more time there, set up more meetings, trying to discern what's up, and then if they need more assistance, do you have the resources to rotate some services over there?
Well, that's right, Dean.
Is that clear?
I think it is.
Okay.
I think where you were saying about, in the beginning, about actually working with the school to figure out what it is exactly that's maybe not working.
And if they need more resources, can you swing them over there too?
Well, we want to work the strategy first, Dean. We want to make sure that we're actually making good use of the resources that we provide to begin with, right? Before we start piling on more, adding more, even if it's needed, we want to make sure that we're making good use of the overall district strategy coupled with the intensive support strategy to make sure that, again, we're making those efforts take hold before, but we certainly work with the schools to make sure that they have what they need to move forward.
Yeah, I would say kind of baked into the process is this constant review of prioritization. Where are the current resources and do they need to shift? Oftentimes they're the time and resources of the partner or the specific department that's actually working with that school per the request that they've made that's outlined in their SIP. In some instances we found even a mismatch, and we've made those adjustments throughout the year. I think that's the important thing about the kind of quarterly review of progress, to determine what's actually having an impact on the school to make the adjustment. We have more data to do that now than we did in the past.
Kind of two areas, and let's start out with, I don't know which one's harder, but the first area I want to start out with is intensive support schools, and just the designation of light touch, light touch intensive support. Somebody asked me a couple months ago how the decisions to categorize the schools are made and what's the basis, and I couldn't answer, and so now here's an opportunity to get an answer on that, and is it a combination of factors? Is there a formula? Is it a holistic approach where you look at a number of things and then in the end say yes, no, without, they hit the cut score thing? And if so, either way, what are those things that are looked at?
Yeah, it's more of that, it's definitely not a formula, so we don't have an exact science that we use, but it's largely driven by data, and largely driven by student achievement data. We're looking at places that fall below the district average in both growth and proficiency, and places where we know we need to see that accelerated progress. But beyond just student achievement data, data related to discipline practices, attendance, also play into that as well.
Yeah, I would say risk ratios also play a factor, and then just paying attention to the capacity in the school, particularly given the need. And then we also pay close attention to where there's a new principal, or the number of new teachers and the type of capacity building that's needed that would help us orchestrate the right levels of support for that school.
And then kind of a follow-up on that. I know that in the last 3 years, some schools have moved into intensive support. Have any moved out?
Gompers Elementary School was the first school to make that shift out of intensive support. But I think it's good to note that it is flexible, and that the designations are more about the need that the schools currently have, so that's constantly being assessed. I think it's also important to note that we've also really worked to make sure that we're clear in the messaging that it shouldn't be a bad thing to be signaled as an intensive school, which I know really early on could have been the feeling from some of our school teams and from our teachers. I think it's an acknowledgement on our part as a central office, again, around reciprocal accountability. We owe you support in the places where we know there's more need or where we need to see accelerated results, and we know those schools cannot do it alone. Coupled with the great school-based strategy and additional supports, though, from central office, I think we're proving that it puts us on the track that we need to be on in order to close gaps.
And I agree it should be a stigma, but I do think that moving out should be something to be celebrated, that this school has built capacity and that it doesn't need, I mean, and that's, so I think that, on one hand, you don't want to stigmatize, and you're absolutely right about that. On the other, I think that and also, it's, it would, the flexibility and changing around, and that kind of leads to the second area of questions, which is, one is just a quick observation. You said SIPs are going up real soon, like this October 3rd or something. Please, please, please ask the schools to, when they turn their SIPs, their full SIPs into PDFs, to check to make sure that every line and every page is legible, because about half of them, about half the pages get cut off and they get reformatted, and they come from an Excel soft spreadsheet, and when they turn them into PDFs, you can't read them. So just that, that's a small matter. But please, it's just it's kind of a user-friendly. Some of the things that Queenie was talking about earlier about how are we accessible to people. That's one of the places where I've noticed that we have a little problem.
Yeah, I would agree. I think our goal a couple of years ago was to provide both kind of a family-friendly version,
right, and then the full. This year, our research and evaluation team actually moved us out of the Excel spreadsheet world into Google. So all the schools are able to design, implement each of theirs. So we expect those. Please have someone to check.
Yes.
And it's it's and then the other thing was about the SIP process and about the process. I guess that I understand flexibility within constraints, flexibility within
parameters.
Parameters. Thank you. The other word. I still worry as I review the SIPs, and I clearly haven't looked at the new ones, but occasionally I look at the ones from last year as we go forward, that there is not a lot of difference among the schools in the goals or the numbers change or the strategies. And when I talk to people in the district and I'm around the district, I see kind of distinct needs at schools that aren't captured in the SIPs. And I talk to people in the schools and they're like, yeah, well, the SIPs are essentially what the Doyle building wants us to focus on. You don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear it either. And I understand that actually I think that across the board there are things that we have to have common that we're focused on, and there's no question about that. But I think that encouraging more flexibility for school-driven, things that emerge from the school, issues, problems, goals, and strategies is something that I hope we can make a priority as we go through the next round of SIPs. I guess that's a comment and maybe kind of your responses to that. And I saw Alex's kind of blanch when I said that. But you hear it. You do hear it. And sometimes you hear it from people in the SBLT, and sometimes you hear it from people who are not. But the people in the SBLTs, it particularly worries me because they're in the process.
Yeah.
The others are getting kind of, rumors.
Yeah, thank you for that. And your point is well taken. I mean, balancing flexibility within parameters is always kind of a dance that we're constantly engaged in schools. It's a very dynamic process. I do think the best, of course, of both worlds is mirroring what we know to be best practice, which we don't have the luxury of not implementing what we know works in education, to the school-based, more organic strategies that do bubble up. I do think that there's room for both of those to actually live in a solid school improvement plan. In the beginning, I think schools had maybe more of a mechanical approach to the way they approach the SIP process. Okay, what do I have to put in the SIP process? But as the years progress, you do see schools, I think, taking on a more unique approach to how they formulate their strategies. But we do want to make sure that we are insisting that best practices and what we know works for kids and families is something that we are making consistent across our district.
I think she said it well. I think the most important aspect, as I alluded to earlier, is the school district partnership, right? It starts with a true understanding about what the data is saying are the key points that need to be identified, and come to consensus with the school-based leadership team to figure out what are those right priorities, and then giving the multiple cycles of feedback a school is provided to make sure that those best practices are leveraged within the school improvement plan. So the school is not leveraging time and resources on a strategy that may not get them the results. We agree that understanding and that decision-making should be happening in the school, but in partnership with central office to make sure that they have the right resources attached to the right strategy needed given what their data points are.
I guess this will be my last comment on this one, is that I'd like to almost see, every school have a wild card that doesn't maybe fit the categories that you have, that there's the literacy, math, family involvement, that you have those straight categories, and that they just are given a wild card, something that maybe crosses that and give them an opportunity to say, hey, this is our wild card goal. It might encourage, and something that maybe crosses the boundaries between multiple things, or is on a left field. Just a thought.
Okay. Any other questions on this topic?
Thank you, President Howard. We'd like to know that November will be Central Office Appreciation Week as well, if you want to celebrate with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Thanks, Alex.
We'll put it on our calendars. Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the consent items. So I'll move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all the motions set forth in Section C of the electronic agenda prepared for the September 26, 2016 regular school board meeting, exactly as said motions are written. By voting affirmatively on this motion, a board member expresses his or her affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated hereby, subject to any express separations that have been made by any member of the school board. May I get a second, please?
Second.
Been moved in seconds. Are there any separations today?
I'd like to pull 6.3 interim bills.
6.3?
You know, I can't get the agenda. What is that one?
Interim bills.
Okay.
It's a strange one to pull.
Okay. Any others?
6.10,
strange guy, man.
the avid evaluation,
You'll
just
be-
because I will
Okay.
recuse myself.
Okay. So we have two separations, so we have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. So I always tend to forget, do we want to take the separations first or not?
Do the main motion.
Okay, let's do the main motion first. One of these days, I want to change this motion. It's just, something about it never agrees with me. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Somebody, your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, next, first item separated is 6.3, interim bills.
I was looking at the check register, which is equivalent what the interim bills is, and I was looking for something else, and I noticed that we had cut a check to the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, which is a key player in creating, in the push to create non-school district authorizers and to push for what we call 2R or independent charter schools nationwide. And I asked some questions, and it turns out that we've been a member of this organization since 2012, which means at the very time the bills that created the UW authorization opportunities, we were helping to fund the lobbying effort to create that. I don't want to continue doing this. I understand that the check's already been cut, but as a board member, I want to ask, how do I end our membership so that this doesn't happen, so that we do not automatically renew a membership for another year and do this? So how do I do that? Because this is not, it's $1,250. It's not going to come before an agenda. Do I ask for something to be added to an agenda? What do I do?
I mean, I think for this point, it's noted at this point. I'm still we're still looking as to kind of who signed off, but none of us currently are advocating strongly for the membership. We've used the guidelines for our documents, but those are free and those are available. Those are required to be used under law, so I think it's noted. And unless we can come up with a good argument otherwise and share that with the board, we wouldn't move forward with.
Okay, so it's kind of an unofficial decision's been made that that the membership will be terminated after this year. Termination.
Again, we're following up with where the original registration came from.
And if something changes from that, you'll bring that back to the board? Thank you. That's why I pulled it off the consent agenda, to have that information.
Sounds good. I think most of the board would be in support of having that information. So,
Do we need to vote on that?
well, we still have to.
No, we've already cut this check. We can't pull it back. We don't want to cancel the check. That's not good.
So, okay, well, thanks for noting it, and I'll move that the Board of Education authorize the payment of interim bills covering the period of August 10th through September 13, 2016, in the amount of $11,450,000. Is that right? $11,458,235.51. Okay, it's been moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any other comments? Ms. Mayor, your advisory vote, please. Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, 610. Okay. I move that the Board of Education approve an expenditure to WCER as the fiscal agent for the Hope Lab for the provision of the AVID 2015-16 middle school evaluation at a cost not to exceed $50,000 with funding from the 2016-17 AVID operating budget.
Second.
It's been moved and second. And
One comment.
comment. Sure.
I had a lot of questions about this, and I want to thank staff for answering those questions and creating an understanding of what has changed in this evaluation. And I want to note that there are, in my opinion, two major things that have changed, well, three. One is that it's $20,000 less. Two is that we're no longer looking at the impacts of AVID on 8th graders, and only looking at them as high school preparation and how those impacts would be manifested in high school performance. And three is that we're no longer incorporating standardized tests in the outcomes. Standardized tests are still being used to construct the comparison groups. I have mixed feelings on the standardized test thing, and I will say that one of the things about the high school AVID evaluation is that multiple years we got reports for impacts of AVID on ACT scores, and they were generally negative. And then suddenly the ACT scores disappeared from the AVID reports we were getting. I don't know what the impacts were or will be on Explore, but I would I'm a little wary that these are being taken out. I'm going to vote in favor of this, and I also, I'm going to vote in favor of this, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. The recusal the same as that abstention?
Yes.
Okay. Some days, Samaya, your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? And opposition, with one abstention. So, motion carries 6-1-0, I believe.
601.
Is it 601, right. Okay, well, that concludes our consent agendas for this evening. Next item on the agenda will be Instruction Work Group. Mr. Mertz.
Okay, a report from our meeting on September 12th, and we had two items on the agenda that evening. We had a preview of the special education plan current work, and that discussion will be continued at our next meeting, which is scheduled for 10/10 for October 10th, and that will be the final, we hope, session of the special education plan before the instructional work group, and it is currently scheduled to be voted on by the Board of Education at the end of October, and I've lost my October dates because we've been switching those so much. And then the other item before the instructional work group was an action item. Well, it was both a information and action item. It was an update on the technology plan, now dubbed Ignite. And the action item portion of this is that we must submit a plan to DPI every 3 years, I believe. And we are slightly overdue, but they've given us a waiver and an extension. So we will need to vote on that tonight to forward it to DPI. So if anyone has any further questions or comments about Ignite prior to the vote, now would be the time. And Dylan, I don't have language.
Would you like me to?
Because this is down.
Would you like me to do it?
If you want to make the motion, go ahead.
TJ moved that the Board of Education approve the Ignite Information and Technology Plan dated September 2016 as set forth in the materials prepared for the September 26, 2016 regular meeting to take effect immediately.
Dean seconds.
I was going to say, and James seconded.
And I'll second
James
it.
seconded.
Ma'am, you're
Aye.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 7-0. And as I said before, we have the October meeting is October 10th. In addition to the special education plan, we will also be looking at our district's at-risk plan, as well as an update on the English language learner plan.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Merks. Next item on the agenda is Operation Work Group. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you. We had a discussion of a couple of important items on our meeting on September 19th. First one was sort of an update on actions or directions that we need to provide TJ with respect to TID number 25 and TID number 41. We had questions about how TID 25 has been accounted for over the years. The city sent us a letter that explained it and expects that the problems won't continue in the future. And on that basis, I move that the Board of Education direct TJ Mertz as the board representative to the Joint Review Board to support the amendment to Tax Incremental District TID number 41 as a donor TID for TID number 40. And this was the one to make the Oscar Mayer TID solvent so that it could be closed out, I believe.
Second.
Any discussion? Meyer, your advisory vote?
Aye. Quick discussion, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
well-
And I just want to say that though I am satisfied with current procedures and satisfied that the district is not taking a financial hit because of this, I still question why it has taken so long for this to come before the Joint Review Board. And I want to put that in the minutes and, with your permission, repeat that at the Joint Review Board on Thursday.
And TJ, actually, I do have a question. I looked at the agenda for the Board of Estimates tonight, and there were 4 or 5 separate items where the city was moving to spend money from TID 32 for various things involving State Street. They wanted to buy cameras, they wanted to buy pedestrian counters and install them in sidewalks, they want to spend money on public art. Does that stuff ever come before the Joint Review Board, or is that just kind of...
Only rarely, and there are two interpretations of what must come before the Joint Review Board, one of which is that if the total budget for the project is increased, then it must come before it. If there is movement within the initially passed budget or amended budget, and it doesn't go over that limit, people at the city believe that it does not have to come before the Joint Review Board. So the only thing that when we do approve TIDs, the only thing that really is firm is the dollar amounts, not how it's being spent. And you know, there might be a little subtlety, gradations in interpretations on that, but that's what I've learned over the time, because I used to think project plans meant project plans, but they don't. Project plans mean budgets. And if the budget, and if the dollar amount doesn't change, then it does not come before the Joint Review Board.
Okay, good, thank you, that's helpful.
It's helpful to know, I don't know if it's helpful in reality. You know, it's, yeah.
So, May I?
Yes, you bet.
So, I mean, on that note, I was going to abstain because I disagree with TIDs and TIFs in general. And this highlights a good reason. I think the city does not offer ample transparency in the expenditures that they do undertake. And I think us as taxpayers, we just kind of follow blindly. So that's all. I would like more transparency from our city entities in these expenditures. In some cases, I feel that they are extremely frivolous, where there's other places that they can be utilized or equitably utilized. Everything does not revolve around downtown, State Street. You know, oftentimes the north side, the east side were neglected and everything balanced west of the Capitol. But you know, so that's all.
Okay, thanks. And the second part of the motion, the second motion involving TID, is that I move that the Board of Education direct TJ Mertz as the board representative to the Joint Review Board to support the amendment to TID number 25.
Aren't they supposed to be voted on separately?
We didn't vote.
Did we not vote on 4041?
We didn't vote for
No.
4041.
Oh, I'm sorry, I jumped the gun.
Yeah.
Thank you. With respect to the first one, 4041, that's been moved and seconded, and it's ripe for a vote, I guess, huh? Amaya, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
That passes 6-0 to 1. Now we move to the second motion, and I move that the Board of Education direct TJ Mertz as the board representative to the Joint Review Board to support the amendment to TID number 25.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Meyer, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye. I'm a nay on 25.
Okay. Let's try again. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstentions?
Abstention.
Okay, that one passes 5-1 to 1. The other topic of our meeting on September 19th is the Isthmus Montessori initial charter proposal. And what we have before us this evening is whether we want to request that the Isthmus Montessori folks bring forward a more detailed proposal by November 1st of 2016. And in connection with that, I will move that the Board of Education, in response to an initial proposal from Isthmus Montessori Academy, formally request a more detailed proposal based on feedback received during the Operations Work Group meeting on September 19th, 2016. Such detailed proposal would need to be submitted by November 1st, 2016. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I want to make a statement. Some of the comments that came towards the Montessori and towards, we do not want to give you a runaround. And on the work, there's some apprehension that I felt. But I think if you believe in something, you're willing to work for it and willing to take some hard no's if that's the case. But I experienced, my youngest went through Montessori pre-K, and I saw really good benefits. I like the freedom that it awards to the kids and the individual opportunities that it yields to learn at your own pace and with your own interest. So I wish you well, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Steve?
Yeah, I have no doubt the Montessori program is a good program. It is. It's done a lot of good. It's been around for a long time, and where it operates well, it operates effectively. When I first ran, I had a position on how to accept charter schools, and I've refined it. And at this point, because of the transformations that have gone on in public education over the last 3 years, I find it very, very difficult to support a charter application that we don't initiate ourselves. I could support charter schools, but I want us to bring them forward. It's the complicated mess and not mess, but the complications of implementing an outside program and the budgetary problems that it creates are really difficult right now for me to support it. So I won't be supporting this.
Anyone else? TJ?
I think this vote tonight, this kind of two-step process to go from initial application to a detailed proposal, there is some not very well-defined threshold that has to be passed in terms of your belief that within the time period this will emerge as a viable proposal. And I think we all have we have our rubric, but I think we all individually have our own ways of weighing that. I think that all of us look at the finances in some sense. All of us look at the education plan. I think we also have to look at the interactions that have occurred with the proposers and what we know about the proposers, and weigh those factors and ask ourselves whether this could conceivably, whether there is a good chance, because it's always conceivable, but whether there's a good chance, whatever that means, that this will become a viable proposal by December, essentially. And weighing all those, I see that as a very small chance. And I think that there are a number of issues and that remain around budget, around attendance area. I look at things like a 45-to-1 middle school student ratio. I look at questions that were asked that weren't answered in terms of responsiveness and flexibility. I look at the questions that were answered where the Isthmus Montessori people displayed very little flexibility in terms of the high school and the attendance area that I could see. And I don't think this is going to get there. And so I'll be voting no.
James?
Yes, I've heard a lot of the comments, and very good comments, and I really appreciate the comments from the board because I have not had the time to dig as deeply into this proposal as some of the others. But I would like to, from what I know and I've heard, I would like to see the detailed proposal, and because I would like more time to delve into some of the details. And so, having said such, I will be supporting the proposal to move forward to the next level.
Yeah?
Gotta go around the table. In general, my comments, I would stand on the side that administration came up with before this came to the board, and that was that it didn't meet the criteria outlined in the rubric that went through their committee. I did review the responses that we received from IMA based on the questions that the board submitted or discussed last week, I guess. I didn't find all of the answers to be suitable or taking into account the very legitimate concerns that come into play when you want to be a public option or a public school, and the obligations that we have to serve all students in our school district. So I am concerned about that. Any plan that moves forward, I will still be looking very closely at the areas that I identified. I feel the staffing for students with disabilities is inadequate. 2.2 staff people for, I can't remember if it was 100 students or what, is inadequate in the first year. I don't remember the right number, but I can say just from firsthand knowledge, if your staff is going to be 1.2 student services, and that's going to include the cross-categorical teacher, the nursing staff, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist, a speech and language pathologist, counseling services, and then you're going to have one SEA to support a student that may need support or several students. That math doesn't add up, because you could have a child come into that school who utilizes a wheelchair for mobility, may require nursing or medical service at school, may be using assistive technology, and if you have one student like that, then that makes it very difficult for another student to come in who may need some support due to behavioral issues or other communication issues. So I disagree that staffing is adequate, and I feel that what I've learned, that what's come out of MPS and the school choice program there and the voucher program, is that we see voucher schools as well as charter schools saying that we want to serve all students, but then not having the staff on hand to actually do that, which acts as a barrier. And we can look at the demographics of MPS. It's 20% upwards of students with disabilities, while the voucher program serves around 2%. And those schools use that as an argument, and they also use the argument that our schools don't need this specialized staff because our program is so strong that those kids won't have that problem at our school. Well, I can say I work with many students that are impacted by autism, dyslexia, and other significant mental health needs, and I think it's naive to make that assumption that just because you have a good model that you're somehow getting rid of a disability that may stay with a student for a lifetime. So the other area that I'll continue to look at, the attendance area, I appreciate the folks from Woodland Montessori coming out tonight and sharing their appreciation. That would be one of the Montessori that resides in the Franklin Randall area, so I'm glad they're coming out to support this because they are currently in the attendance area. But I still think if you want to sell this school as a north and east side neighborhood school, which is almost 30% of our district, number one, that's a very huge neighborhood, and Franklin Randall is not in that neighborhood. So those are my concerns. I want to be upfront publicly. And if people want to get a hold of me directly, I do have a board email. It's on the website.
Okay, thanks. What else?
I just want to, Anna raised the issue of neighborhood school, and looking at maps and looking at other information, it appears that the school is situated within the Hawthorne Attendance District, and that the closest physical school, geographic school, it would be Sherman. And I looked at our enrollment projections for Hawthorne and Sherman, and one of them in 5 years is projected to be at 65% capacity, and the other one is projected to be at 68% capacity, which means that if we go forward with this proposal, we are adding capacity in an area where we already have too much capacity. So.
Okay. Maya, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That passes 4-3. I believe, right?
Can I see the names, please? Just thank you.
All right, well, our next meeting of the Operations Work Group is October 17th, and we'll be talking about the equity policy, and we get to get back to the budget. And I guess it's move our next up here or something like that. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. So we'll continue to move forward here. And the next item on the agenda, other reports to the board. The first report to the board is City of Madison Education Committee. There was no meeting since the last regular board meeting, and I don't have anything to report. Do you have anything to report, Anna?
City Education?
Yes. Any thoughts? Yes. Okay, so, no report. Next item on the agenda, Student Senate. Amalia.
Student Senate has started off the school year with a pretty strong membership, and we're excited to see it continue to grow. We're trying to work with some of the clubs at the schools to make sure that our membership is diverse, and that's where we are right now. We're just continuing with initiatives from last year and trying to translate the discussions that we had into action.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Maya? All right, seeing none. Next item on the agenda, other business. We have a change to the regular meeting schedule from October 31st to October 24th. Can someone give a just a very brief explanation of that change?
We just thought it was a better date to hold the regular board meeting on.
Halloween. And it would be appreciated as a board member to be able to take my kids.
I don't have Halloween's kids anymore, so that's what that date is.
You can hand them candy.
I'm all for it.
I wanted to see everyone in costume though, so.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll move that the Board of Education move the October regular meeting from the 31st of October to October 24th, 2016.
Second.
Been moved and second. Mayor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is Education Resource Officer Contract. And talk a little bit about this before we make any motions here, so we all have a clear understanding of where we are here. I'll be perfectly upfront, I don't support this item being on the agenda. I'm not sure it should be here, but it's here, and we'll talk about it. But I'm going to talk a little bit about why we're here and how we got here. We had 2 meetings on this subject, and we had an closed session and we had an open session where the board agreed 6-1 that we move forward with our 3-year contract. And so we had a 6-1 agreement here. And so now we have something else on the agenda here that talks about a 2-year contract. I firmly believe the 3-year contract gets at what we as a board has been trying to do. And let's not forget what we've been trying to do here. It's not about the length of the contract. It never has been. Never been about the length of the contract. It's always been about the substance of the contract, what's best for kids. And we thought the leverage, and this was stated in open session, that the only leverage we had was the opt-out clause. And I believe that the other party that we're negotiating with is really only concerned with financing. And so I see any contract other than the one that we've already voted on to move forward as not going in the direction that we've agreed on. So, and we've heard from a lot of individuals that come before the board to speak on this subject. And I personally will not turn my back on those taxpayers who've come before us and asked us repeatedly to really look out for the students in our district, and especially the students of color that's been, as we've heard tonight from speakers, that's really disproportionately represented and addressed in our schools. I, on a personal level, will not turn my back on those taxpayers. I think that anything short of what we've agreed on to move forward with, in my view, is exactly what we'll be doing. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I'll make this motion here so that you all, we can have a brief conversation, but I don't think it needs to be a long conversation. If someone has some comments they want to make, and we'll vote. So I'll move that the Board of Education approve the revised agreement, the revised agreement with the City of Madison for the provision of education resource officers covering MMSD school year 2016-17, 17-18, 18-19, as set forth in documents prepared for the September 2016 regular meeting.
I second.
It's been moved and second. Comments at this point? Mr. Mertens.
First, I have to clarify for people listening the difference between the two contracts. Primarily is the contract we passed on Wednesday allows for annual terminations with a July notification and a December 31st termination. The contract that is before us tonight allows for a single termination prior to the 3 years with an April notification, April of 2018, and a termination in July of 2018 at the end of the school year. So that's the difference between the two contracts. Is that correct, Dylan?
They are both three-year contracts.
They're both
in
three-year
their terms.
contracts.
Yes, the difference is the notifications for
And the
termination.
termination
So they
dates.
both have termination and opt-out, but the timing of those is what is different.
Okay. I like the one we passed on Wednesday better. I think that it gives us the best opportunity to either create something through a process that is better for our students and better for our staff and better for our community. The improvements, limiting the harm that's being done to our students while trying to preserve the positive qualities that have been identified with the ERO program, and if we are not, and to come to a decision if we are not able to find a balance that we're comfortable with, then transition to something else. And I think that the contract we passed on Wednesday is the best way to do that. And I also think that it's important that we did have a board majority behind that, and that board majority needs to be respected. I also think that we need to have further clarity on the issue that President Howard identified about how things get on agendas, because we've been doing informal practices around that, and there are some policies related to it, but we've gotten kind of away from those policies, and I think that as a board we need to talk about that and decide how we want to do it. And so, yet, I also think that it's very, very important that we move forward with a process, period, with the city as a partner, and that we do that as fast as possible. And although the, quote, 2-year contract, the contract that has the single termination option, is not anywhere near my ideal, I do think that it would allow that process, continue to allow that process, and that it would begin that process in a way where perhaps we could see some sense of collaboration with the city. And it also avoids us getting into timing issues around a potential veto and veto override with the city with the contract we passed on Wednesday. So for that reason, I'll be supporting a difficult decision, but I'll be supporting the option that's before us tonight. Dean.
I as well think the one was Wednesday was good enough. If city people are listening, we don't want you to pay anything for it. We'll pay for the whole thing. We don't want, we've got that long understood, shouldn't even get brought up. What we do want and what we do know that the city partners want to do with us is discuss how to continue to move away from militaristic responses to behavior in our schools. We did that 2 years ago when we implemented the BEP, and we're continuous. We did it very consciously, and everyone that I've talked to at the city wants to continue that conversation with real policies directed at the few minor things and negative things that clearly exist. This is that can help us interrupt and destroy the pipeline from school pipeline to jail. That it's something that is real, it does exist, and we want to stop it. And it impacts us in our schools even though we're doing good things. It doesn't mean we should continue these good things when the results aren't being impacted. So we'll continue those good things and then study this, the examples that are being done in other parts of the country and other school districts that are struggling with the same issue and are ahead of us, and we'll have that discussion and implement these procedures that we feel that can continue to disrupt that negative process that we see the results. So it's about that, nothing else. We'll continue this relationship, move with an open, possibly board, task force level discussion on how to do this accurately and include it in with the BEP plan,
and we'll be going somewhere then. That's what was exactly what President James was talking about in his comments about what our desire was to do. So the first contract was fine, because that's what we're trying to do with this thing. That's all we're trying to do. So I'll be voting against this. If we have to vote, I believe, to support the one on Wednesday, we have to vote against this one.
That's correct.
And that's what I'll be doing.
Michael.
One final statement. I know, James, you weren't happy with the way the procedure went about from our contract to Wednesday, but I see it as a positive. I mean, TJ stated that contract needed to be approved. Somebody had to start and approve something, so that way the movement forward would happen. And I find the politics that happen not helpful, but it has happened, and it fell on. So now we can approve this and move forward and seal the contract. But I don't see that just getting the contract set in stone as a negative either. I think we can move forward and study how our EROs can improve the good work that they are doing and afford the safety that many people, many parents, many students, many teachers were happy to have by having our EROs available and ready in schools, while we can identify issues. Some of the issues that come from us, such as the truancy, was a huge discrepancy number again, bringing African Americans and students of color with higher truancy citations, and that unfortunately fell on our EROs, which is unjust. That's coming from us, from administration. Also, we can address many of the issues where the BEP is not implemented as it should be, bringing in the EROs prematurely to a situation that shouldn't happen. And so we can have those discussions and make those improvements without having it be a tug of war. I think we are in the driver's seat in this situation, and we have time to make those improvements. That can start now, that can move on to the school day, through the school day, and identify and better data and things that we can do better. And it also emphasizes that the city is looking to work, and they've made numerous statements about studying better ways of policing throughout the city, which is leaps and bounds from other cities that are not even in this place where Madison is, that there is an acknowledgement that there is an imbalance in the way things are happening. So I think I want to applaud the work that Dylan did, and the work that the city and other entities continue to do after our Wednesday meeting, Thursday. I saw it as a fruitful outcome. And that's cooperation, that's bargaining, that's things that we were fighting for in the bigger picture of things. And to shoot it down now, I think we're kind of having a disconnect of sorts, and unfortunately we had to bargain back and forth with the city, but it's moving things forward. So that's all.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else? Mayor?
I'm just worried about what will happen if the city and the board disagree over the contract. As I understand it, the decision will then be left up to the city council. I feel like as a board, we've made our opinion clear and have expressed our qualms about the collaboration process with the city. So I just don't want to see the work that's gone into the negotiations that we brought to the table go to waste. If the city council is presented with both our plan and the city's plan, I'm just not sure which way the decision will go, and I just don't want to be left in that position.
All right, thank you. Mary?
The
contract that we passed made concessions to the city with regards to the term of it, with regards to the dates for opting out. I think all of the board members have been really clear here that we want to have officers in our school because we feel that they contribute to the safety of our students, but we also see that there needs to be changes that are about best practices that we can learn from other places around the country. And so with this proposal that's on the table, in essence, we do not have any negotiating power to make any changes until the 2018-19 school year. And when you talk about 114 arrests, excluding truancies, for 114 each school year, that impacts lives and our kids. And so by having one additional school year before we can be sure that we will have an honest negotiating process for changes, we're impacting the lives of students whose lives might be changed by being able to be put into a restorative justice area. And that's what I think about, taking 2 full years before we really can make the changes and have the negotiating power to do that is just too long for our students. So I will be voting against this.
Thank you, Mary. Any other comments? Superintendent Cheatham.
Yeah, I believe we had a long discussion on this, well, it was kind of long, on last Wednesday, and I think the board came to a good place and came to a place of agreement and compromise with the ongoing negotiations that were taking place with the city. I feel like we made a reasonable request in that we have a contract that has some type of termination language, which is consistent with the other city contracts that were reviewed by Dylan. And so I feel that bringing ours into line is practical and thoughtful. I know the alders that I have spoken with also believe that we have a reasonable contract on the table. And so I believe we should stick with what we talked about last Wednesday.
Thank you. Superintendent Cheatham. Oh, Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I think we all agree that the contract, well, 6 of us agree that the contract we passed last Wednesday was a good one, but unfortunately, when you negotiate, it takes 2 parties, and you can't unilaterally decide what you want to do. I think that we have, we've made our views clear, the city's made its views clear, and we can't impose our will on the city. And where we started at 1 year, they started at 3 years, and the proposal at the table ends up at 2 years. And I think that that is, it's not what we want, but I think it's minimally acceptable, which is often the position that parties end up at in negotiations where they each have strong views in the rightness of their cause. So I'm going to vote in favor of this, and if we don't accept this, then I think we run the real risk of not having any contract at all, and that's a situation I want to avoid. So it's not optimum, but I don't see any reason to think that that the city, having moved to the 2-year deal, will say, "Oh, okay, well now we agree with you if you don't agree." So I think the responsible vote for us is to approve this and get this issue behind us and get to work and talking with the city about making the kind of changes we all want.
Superintendent Cheatham.
Thank you, James. I want to say a couple of things. As the administrative team, we have fully supported the board stance, and that includes the vote that the board took on Wednesday night. On Thursday, when our team met with the city, that included Dylan and Luis Udice, the city did something that was unexpected, which was to by the end of that day, offer new language, which they had been unwilling to do up until that point. And
I personally believe that is because of the school board's vote on Wednesday night, that we would not have seen that kind of movement without, without the decision that the board made as a team. We offered, we forwarded that to you to see if you wanted to agendize it tonight, which is why we're here. I think that, I just want you to know that I think that language that was offered happened because of the board's good work, as well as our team's good work. My recommendation would be to accept the city's language. I do fully support, I agree that our language is better. I think that's true. And yet, I think that what the city has offered us, I personally think that it meets the needs that we set out, that we laid out as a board, including the need for time to work on aligning our practices to best practices, and including opt-out language that again, the city was unwilling to include in previous versions of the contract. Before the board makes a decision, and again, I will support wherever the board lands on this completely, I would like for Dylan to just say a word about why we, based on our knowledge, thought that the city's language met the concerns that had been laid out by the board. Is that all right, Dylan? Mm-hmm.
So, I was recommending this language, again, with no commitment on behalf of the board, but recommending the language in light of our stated objectives, which are to keep EROs in school, improve our contract in a way that we can continue to review for best practices, to improve the contract on behalf of our students. A big jump in that actually occurred in the contract the board previously approved, which was the February 1st, 2017 work groups with both parties to continue to review. Department of Justice just came out with their guidance. That'll be a good document to use. And that our goal was to, one of the statements at Wednesday's board meeting was to come to the table as partners with some equal leverage as we move forward in bargaining in future years. We've made some changes regarding when we come back to the table so that we can avoid this type of use it or lose it kind of bargaining at the last minute in future years, that we can align to budget years, so we might be able to see concessions with budget in the future. In our meeting with the city on Wednesday, we certainly Thursday morning, certainly began with a position that we are the party that's made the concessions, that most of the changes are not concessions by the city. Agreeing to talk is not a concession, it's just a good move for everybody, and that we can't look at the red line as everything has to be a concession, but it's cooperation. I believe the contract offers some surety or some assurance into the process so that we can move on with the work. It does provide a meaningful out. I agree with Mary that our contract would be an out on December 31st of 2017, and that this contract would add January through the end of the school year. So there is a longer period of time. But with our goal, I do believe that the current language the city has offered does meet the goal and some assurances of resolution prior to the termination of the 45-day extension.
Okay, thank you, Dylan. I think everyone's commented, and we have I think we've, did I read the motion?
Yes.
Okay, and it's been seconded. Okay, Mayor, you'll have the vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Opposed. Motion fails 4-3. Okay, any old or new business to be brought before the board tonight? Seeing none, I move adjournment. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? We adjourn.